He's a Super Bowl champ. He's a 4-time MVP. He's a sure Hall of Famer, and despite being the oldest player in the NFL in 2024, someone who blew out his Achilles at the beginning of last season, he's expected to turn the New York Jets, yes, the New York Jets, historically one of the worst franchises of all time, into contenders. That's because, at his best,
Aaron Rodgers is a bad man. Bad man.
Bad man.
He's a bad man.
Bad man.
He's a bad man.
But it wasn't always this way. From having to start this post-high school football career at a community college, to being introduced to the NFL world in embarrassing fashion, to having to sit for 3 seasons behind a guy who wasn't all that excited to have him there, Rodgers' rise was anything but a given. But it happened anyway. Let's take a look at how he got here. Rodgers grew up in Northern California and Oregon, the son of a former college football player at Chico State. He was a multi-sport star, but football was his #1 passion. He was a standout quarterback for Pleasant Valley High School and dreamed of playing for Bobby Bowden at Florida State. But at the time, he was under 6 feet tall. He received 0 Division I football offers.
In front of him to motivate him.
Why do you think no one believed in you?
Far too much weight is put into your height, your weight, your 40 time, your bench press. The things you can't measure, your character, your confidence, your mental toughness, your physical toughness. Not as much weight is put into that. And fortunately enough, I was able to fly under the radar. I think it's the best thing that happened to me.
His under-the-radar journey took him to nearby Butte College, and he excelled right away. In his first year, he put up a 10-1 record with 2,408 yards, 28 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions. That, plus the fact that he had grown to 6'2", meant that he was finally in prime position to secure a spot at a major college. Again, he didn't go far. He ended up at Cal under coach Jeff Tedford, who had sent his share of QBs to the NFL as first-round picks. Rodgers immediately played like he'd be another one. In his first year with the Golden Bears, he put up more than 2,900 yards passing, with 19 TDs and 5 INTs. The next season, he threw for fewer yards but got more efficient, upping his completion percentage to 66% and posting a touchdown-to-interception ratio of 24-8. In the regular season, Cal went 10-1, with their only defeat coming at the hands of top-ranked USC in Los Angeles. They finished ranked 4th, but were still passed over for a trip to the Rose Bowl. They had to play in the Holiday Bowl instead, where they lost. After that, with his eyes on being a top draft pick, perhaps the top draft pick, Rodgers said goodbye to Cal and decided to head to the NFL. This is where, in one timeline, Rodgers would become the #1 overall pick, stay in NorCal with the San Francisco 49ers, and lead what was practically his home team to numerous wins and Super Bowl trophies. Except that didn't happen.
With the first selection in the 2005 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Alex Smith, quarterback, Utah.
He didn't go second either, or third. Instead, Rodgers' NFL career started with public embarrassment, as the first big impression many people got of Rodgers was him sitting there on live TV in New York City, waiting for someone, anyone, to call his name.
Rodgers still a quarterback waiting to happen.
A couple of weeks ago, Aaron, you were the clear-cut #1. What's changed over that time?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you.
There really isn't another team in that top 15 that is enamored with Aaron, and that's why he's still sitting. That does not mean he's not going to be a terrific quarterback down the road.
Over 4 hours passed on draft day, with Rodgers stuck in the green room the whole time. Some said his mechanics weren't perfect. Others theorized that Tedford's history of first-round flameouts was at play. Whatever the reason, Rodgers wasn't budging.
Kind of joke with the guys in the green room on the bus over, like, hey, who's going to be the last one in there? You know, we all thought we're going top 10. Well, it's not that funny when it's you.
But then the moment came.
With the 24th selection in the 2005 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Aaron Rodgers, quarterback in California.
What was this day like for you?
Well, it wasn't the easiest day, but yeah, it was a long day. Not a lot of things went the way we thought they'd go, but I'm just so excited about being able to go to a team that wants me.
One little problem still. The Packers still had Brett Favre, himself a Super Bowl champ, 3-time MVP, and sure Hall of Famer. Their relationship didn't get off to the best start either. According to Jeff Pearlman's book on Favre, the first words Rodgers ever said to Favre were, "Good morning, Grandpa." Favre didn't like this, according to the book. Rodgers later denied the whole thing, but no matter what, speaking to ESPN later, Favre said, "Not exactly an ideal mentor-mentee relationship." In the end, Rodgers would sit behind Favre for 3 seasons, throwing only 1 touchdown pass in that span. Eventually, though, the Packers moved on from Favre, and the time had come for Rodgers to take over at QB for the historic franchise. They were coming off a 13-3 record. The stage was set for an easy takeover for the former potential number 1 overall pick to make an immediate leap into the pantheon of great QBs of the era. Well, not quite. Rodgers did come out of the gate hot. In his first career start, he even did this.
The throwdown here. Oh, boy. Touchdown! Corey!
The Packers began 2-0, but things got tougher. They lost 3 in a row before bouncing back to get to 4-3. Then the losing started again. In the end, Rodgers threw for more than 4,000 yards, put up 28 TDs to 13 interceptions, and had the league's 11th best QBR. But the Packers went 6-10, 7 whole games worse than their last season with Favre. And Favre was over with the New York Jets, taking them from 4 wins to 9 and making the Pro Bowl. A lot of fans still had high hopes for Rodgers, but others remained skeptical. That skepticism didn't last long. In the 2009 season, Rodgers upped his yardage, TDs, and completion percentage. He lowered his interceptions, and his INT percentage was the best in the NFL. He made the Pro Bowl and brought the Pack back to the playoffs with an 11-5 record. They lost an OT shootout to the Cardinals in the wildcard round, with Rodgers accounting for 5 TDs in regulation.
Mike McCarthy's loving life.
But in overtime, he missed a wide-open receiver that almost certainly would have ended the game with a TD. 2 plays later, Rodgers was stripped, and the ball was recovered and returned for a game-ending score. After the game, Rodgers admitted he should have just held on to the ball and taken a sack instead of trying to make something happen. Clearly, there was unfinished business for the newly minted star. 1 year later, he finished it. But it didn't come easy. Rodgers actually seemed to take a step back in the early part of the 2010 season, when the Packers started 3-3. Rodgers threw 2 more interceptions in the first 7 games of the season than he had all previous year, and he had only 12 touchdowns in those games. Things turned around for Rodgers and the Packers, who shook off that 500 start to get to 8-4, with Rodgers going 5 straight games without a pick. But he sustained a concussion in a loss to the Lions, then missed the next game, putting the Packers in a must-win place over their final 2 games just to make the playoffs. Rodgers delivered, leading Green Bay to wins over the Giants and Bears. Then it got even better. A road win at Michael Vick's Eagles earned them a date with Atlanta, which was a full-on blowout. Rodgers threw 6 TD passes in those games with no picks. On the road against the rival Bears in the NFC Championship game, Rodgers didn't have his best passing day, but he ran for a TD and did just enough to guide Green Bay to the Super Bowl. Then, against the Pittsburgh Steelers at Jerry World, Rodgers cemented his legacy. The Packers took a 21-3 lead, then held on for a 31-25 victory, with Rodgers making some of the best throws of his career on the way. Rodgers outdueled 2-time Super Bowl champ Ben Roethlisberger, throwing for 304 yards, 3 TDs, and no picks. He won Super Bowl MVP. He'd brought the Pack back to the summit. And after that long journey, he reached it himself. Obviously, he wasn't done. He had just turned 27. He won his first MVP the next season, setting the all-time single-season record for passer rating. He won 3 more MVPs after that. Overall, he's thrown for an absurd 59,000 yards in the regular season alone, and there's still more to come. After finding his way to the Jets last season, a year that was cut short by an Achilles injury just a few snaps into his New York career, Rodgers has his sights on a renaissance. Given what he went through during his rise, you can never count him out. With the way Aaron Rodgers' career has blossomed from being the 24th, it's easy to say he was a steal for the Green Bay Packers. Click here to see more of that and other draft steals.